so many super helpful insights from high-level context. So Sean actually gave me a really good starting point. So design process is the king, and I'm gonna say design thinking is the father of design process. So if you imagine like design thinking, usually we say there's 5 steps, and then design process actually, when you are doing your work or doing a project, what's the order or how you combine these 5 steps together, that's become your design process. So that's why when you are doing interview, the recruiter gonna ask you, what's your design process? Because you wouldn't just answer in the general design thinking steps all the time. You need to let them know, like, I know design thinking is 5 steps, but I also understand design process is not linear process. It's back and forth, it's a new combination for each new project. So that's why I'm saying design thinking is the father of the design process. And today I'm gonna talking about STEM thinking in UX. So this is the way how you can combine your STEM thinking with design thinking together and make sure you can apply this thinking into your design process work. So what is STEM thinking? It's a logical approach to problem solving that values experimental findings and data. And a lot of you probably have learned enough math, physics, science subjects. But since you are also really interested in this new UX world, this design world, you don't want to waste your time like in the past what you have learned. And you should know everything that you have learned in the past, they're gonna pave the way for you to become yourself as a best designer in your way. So how to do that, we can try to thinking about what you have learned in the past through the STEM. So there's a lot of thinking methods within the STEM thinkings. I can put some examples here, like verification thinking, critical thinking, abstract thinking, logical reasoning. And then today I will talk about the thinking methods of classification discussion and how you're gonna apply this thinking into your design process. So when do we use classification discussion? Through different science, math subjects, usually there's something unsure. And then we find the target, and then we start to do classification discussion. But how do we apply classification thinking in UX? We can try to think about it like in 10 seconds. I will release the answer later on or just following up my questions. So right now, let's thinking about a quick design challenge. If I'm gonna ask you during your interview or just a hiring process, I want you to thinking about how might we design a flawless matchmaking experience for players. How you gonna solve it? So if we are going back to the way how we used classification discussion thinking, what's the targets here? We're gonna focusing on 2 verbs. One is the matchmaking, another is the term for players, right? These are the 2 main targets that we have for this design question. And how can we discuss it? So how might we design a flawless matchmaking experience for players? So matchmaking is the key, players are also the key. So let's thinking about the timing. Actually, when we are doing classification discussion, you will not only focusing on matching timing, it's all about like before, during, and after. So you can try to use that way to thinking about like, did I actually solve the problem in a very overall way? Did I actually thinking about what is the entry point and where the user gonna go? If you're only focusing on the key flows in the middle, then you probably miss what is the best entry points for your solution. And there's always a lot of things to consider about through the targets here. For players, we need to focusing on single players, team players. And for platforms, we need to thinking about, are they coming from as a console players or PC players or mobile players? And from the game mode, you can see like, oh, are they gonna matchmaking for the battle royale game or creative game? So I'm making an example from Fortnite game, but you can try to refer that to some other games that you played before. So you can see, even though the question is super straightforward, everybody can understand it, but how many of you have thinking about, oh, there's so many different assets, parameters that you need to think about when you are doing the design solution here? And then there's more value behind STEM thinking. And something I want to point out today is I hope everyone can really find out the strengths of classification thinking. I can put more example here. So first one is competitive analysis with matrix. Here's the example. So I believe all of you have done the competitive analysis before, but usually we make a table, right? And then if you are trying to thinking about how I can apply STEM thinking with it, the classification discussion with it, if you can do a better grouping work for it, it will help you so much during your presentation work and your design process. And here's the example. If you find a matrix, what is the most important parameter from X and Y, and then you can actually find something like linear or different kind of like picture or shapes, and then you can draw some conclusions through it. And then second one is complex user flow analysis. So once you apply your classification discussion thinking into it, you can solve so many complex user flows. Just like the example that I mentioned, matchmaking process, it could be super complicated. If you didn't try to make an order or do it in a logical way, you couldn't figure out all the different scenarios at one time. But after you did classification discussion, you know what's the target, you can just group them really well and make sure you didn't miss any edge case. So edge case consideration is the next big point. And then feature prioritization with rationale. This is a super important thing once you start working, and also when you are doing storytelling through your portfolio, you want to show up. I believe most of you have heard double diamonds, right? So we always do convergent and then divergent, convergent again, and then divergent. So for the divergent parts, usually we want you to show up. What's your feature prioritization with rationale? Because you have brainstormed so many different solutions, ideas, but what is our focus? You need to give me the rationale. What's the pro and cons? How you make the decision about that? And classification discussion thinking that's gonna help you prepared where this idea come from. What is the target behind this solutions, and what is the relationship between this idea and another idea? That's gonna help you to better present yourself why you choose this way rather than another one.